The invisible hand. The fluorescent lights of the university library flickered as midnight approached. While most students had long retreated to their dormitories, Priya Sharma remained hunched over her textbooks, her slender fingers moving swiftly across her keyboard. She wasn't working on her own assignments, those had been completed days ago. Instead, she was polishing Vikram Malhotra's presentation for tomorrow's entrepreneurship competition. Just a few more tweaks, she whispered to herself, adjusting the financial projections that Vikram had miscalculated. The bright numbers on her laptop screen reflected in her wire-rimmed glasses as she perfected the slides that would represent not her vision, but his. Priya had met Vikram during their first year at Delhi Technical Institute, where she was reserved and methodical. He was bold and charismatic, a dreamer who could captivate any audience with his passionate speeches about technological innovation. His ideas were brilliant but often lacked the meticulous planning that came naturally to her. They formed an unlikely friendship, the quiet, academically gifted daughter of a bookstore owner and the ambitious son of a taxi driver who spoke of changing the world. "You're still here?" Professor Mehta's voice startled her. The elderly engineering instructor peered over her shoulder. "Ah, Vikram's presentation. You know, you could put your name on these projects too, Priya. Your contributions are substantial." Priya shook her head, a small smile playing on her lips. "He needs this more than I do, sir. His family is counting on him." The next morning, Priya slipped into the back row of the auditorium, her navy blue kurta blending into the shadows as Vikram took the stage. His confident stance betrayed none of the anxiety he'd expressed to her last night. "My smart grid solution will revolutionize how rural communities access electricity," he announced, his voice resonating through the hall. The judges nodded appreciatively as he navigated through the presentation she had refined until 3 a.m. When Vikram was announced as the winner, Priya's applause was the quietest but the most genuine. She slipped out before the celebration began, heading to her part-time job at the campus cafeteria. Her father's medical bills wouldn't pay themselves. Later that evening, Vikram found her in their usual study spot, his eyes bright with excitement. "We did it, Priya. The judges loved it." He placed a box of her favorite sweets on the table between them. "You did it," she corrected gently. "It was your idea. But your help with the numbers made all the difference." He paused, suddenly serious. "Listen, there's this international grant application, the Mercer Foundation Innovation Fellowship. It could change everything for me. But the application is complicated." Priya already knew about the fellowship. She'd researched it weeks ago, anticipating that it would be perfect for Vikram's project. "I can look it over this weekend," she offered. What Vikram didn't see was the notification on her phone, a reminder about her father's chemotherapy appointment that would consume her entire Saturday. She'd have to work through the night to help with Vikram's application, but she never mentioned this sacrifice. As the semester progressed, Priya noticed Vikram's wallet was empty when they went for coffee. Without drawing attention, she began forgetting her lunch, insisting they share his. Then the next day she would bring too much food from home, ensuring he ate properly. When he mentioned needing reference books he couldn't afford, they mysteriously appeared in the library's donation bin, earmarked for student use. Each act of kindness remained her secret, a shadow of support behind his growing spotlight. While classmates saw Vikram as a rising star, only Professor Mehta recognized the truth, that behind this promising young man stood a quiet force, a brilliant mind content to shine her light on another. "Why do you do it?" Professor Mehta asked, her one evening as they watched Vikram practice for another presentation. Priya's eyes never left Vikram as she answered, "Because someday he'll help people who need it most. And that matters more than who gets the credit." What she didn't say, what she barely acknowledged even to herself, was that somewhere between late-night study sessions and early morning coffee runs, Priya had fallen in love with not just Vikram's dreams, but with Vikram himself. Yet she kept this truth buried deeper than any other secret, convinced that some lights were meant to illuminate others rather than shine for themselves. Separate paths, the Mercer Foundation Innovation Fellowship changed everything. Priya still remembered the exact moment. Vikram bursting into the campus library, drawing disapproving glances from studying students as he rushed to her table, waving, his phone with the acceptance email displayed. "I got it, I actually got it." His whisper was more of a suppressed shout. 3 years of funded research at their Silicon Valley campus. Can you believe it? Priya's smile didn't waver as her heart performed a complicated maneuver, soaring with joy for him while simultaneously sinking with the realization of what this meant. She had spent countless hours perfecting that application, researching the Foundation's previous recipients, tailoring Vikram's proposal to align perfectly with their mission. The success was as much hers as his, yet in that moment, watching, his face illuminated with pure joy, she couldn't bring herself to claim any part of it. "I knew you could do it," she said instead. What she didn't say? "I always believed in you, even when you didn't believe in yourself." The weeks before his departure passed in a blur of preparation. Priya helped Vikram with visa paperwork, created budgeting spreadsheets for his time abroad, and researched affordable housing options near the Mercer campus. Meanwhile, her father's condition worsened, requiring more frequent hospital visits that she mentioned to no one, least of all Vikram. On their last evening together, they sat on the rooftop of their favorite campus building, the Delhi skyline stretching before them like a constellation of earthbound stars. "You should apply next year," Vikram said, passing her a samosa from the street food they'd brought up. "Your renewable energy research is far more advanced than mine." Priya shook her head. "My place is here." She didn't elaborate on her father's deteriorating health or the mounting medical bills that made even the idea of leaving impossible. "We'll video chat every week," he promised, "and email constantly." "This isn't goodbye, Priya, it's just intermission." She nodded, not trusting her voice. They both pretended not to notice when she wiped away a tear. The first few months, Vikram kept his promise. Their weekly calls were filled with his excited descriptions of California, the Mercer Foundation's state-of-the-art facilities, and the network of industry leaders he was building. Priya listened, genuinely happy for him, sharing only carefully edited versions of her own life, her research progress, amusing anecdotes from campus, nothing about the nights spent at her father's hospital bedside or how she'd taken a second job to keep up with expenses. Then the weekly calls became bi-weekly, then monthly. His emails grew shorter, more perfunctory. Priya told herself it was natural. He was building a new life, immersed in opportunities she'd always wanted for him. When her father passed away 6 months after Vikram's departure, she didn't tell him. What would be the point? He was presenting at a major tech conference that week. She'd seen the announcements online. Her grief was her own to bear, and she did so with the quiet dignity that had always characterized her life. Meanwhile, Vikram's star continued to rise. His smart grid project evolved into a comprehensive platform for sustainable energy management in developing regions. Tech magazines began featuring his work. 18 months into his fellowship, he announced the formation of his own company, Next-Gen Solutions, with substantial venture capital backing. Priya followed his success from afar, through industry publications and social media. The messages between them had dwindled to occasional holiday greetings and brief congratulations. On professional milestones, sometimes late at night, she would draft long emails telling him everything. About her father, about the teaching position she'd taken at their alma mater after declining a research opportunity abroad, about how proud she was of what he'd accomplished. But she never sent them. 3 years stretched to 5. Priya established herself as a respected assistant professor at Delhi Technical Institute. Her research focused on energy solutions for India's most underserved communities, work that rarely made headlines but slowly improved lives. She dated, occasionally, briefly, never allowing anyone close enough to see the parts of her heart that remained inexplicably reserved for a man who had likely forgotten the details of her face. When Professor Mehta retired, he gave Priya his collection of academic journals and research papers. "You were always my most promising student," he told her, "even if you insisted on hiding in another's shadow." "I never hid," she protested gently. "I just had different priorities." The professor's knowing smile suggested he understood more than she admitted. Among his papers, she later discovered, was a copy of Vikram's Mercer Foundation application, the one she had completed when he'd nearly missed the deadline after a family emergency. Seeing her own words attributed to him brought a complex emotion she couldn't name. Not resentment exactly, but a wistful acknowledgement of paths not taken. In her small apartment that evening, Priya read an online announcement that Next Gen Solutions had secured major international funding for expansion into Asian markets. The article mentioned that founder Vikram Malhotra would be returning to India to establish the company's South Asian headquarters. She stared at his professional headshot, the familiar face now more angular, the boyish enthusiasm replaced by confident authority. 7 years had passed since they'd sat on that rooftop and promised this was just an intermission. Now it seemed the second act was about to begin. Priya closed her laptop and moved to the window, looking out at the same Delhi skyline they had once shared. She had never expected anything from Vikram. Not recognition, not gratitude, certainly not love. She had helped him because she believed in his potential to create meaningful change. That belief, at least, had been vindicated by his success. Tomorrow, she would prepare for the new semester's classes. She would continue her modest research. She would live her quiet, purposeful life exactly as she had chosen to. If their paths crossed again, well, she would cross that bridge when she came to it. What Priya couldn't know was how soon that crossing would come, or how unprepared they both would be for what awaited on the other side. Return of the prodigy. The banquet hall of the Grand Meridian Hotel buzzed with Delhi's elite. Politicians, industrialists, and academics all gathered to welcome next-gen solutions to the Indian market. Crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow over tables adorned with orchids and executives in designer suits. At the center of it all stood Vikram Malhotra, now 32, commanding attention with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to being the most important person in any room. NextGen's commitment to India isn't just business, it's personal, he told the assembled guests, his voice carrying through the state-of-the-art sound system. This is where my journey began, where I first dreamed of creating technology that serves humanity rather than the other way around. From her position near the back wall, Priya observed him with professional interest. She hadn't planned to attend this event, but Professor Mehta's replacement, Department Head Dr. Bhatia, had insisted she represent their university's engineering faculty. After all, he'd said, Delhi Technical Institute should celebrate its successful alumni. Priya wore a simple midnight blue silk sari, her hair swept into a practical bun. She looked every bit the serious academic, blending seamlessly with the background as she'd always preferred. She had no intention of approaching Vikram. What would she even say after 7 years? Congratulations on your success? I helped build the foundation you're standing on. It all seemed pointless now. The formal presentation ended, and the crowd dispersed into networking clusters. Priya was discussing potential university partnerships with an energy ministry official when a familiar voice behind her caused her spine to stiffen. The implementation challenges in rural areas remain significant, but with proper community engagement. She turned slowly, finding herself face-to-face with Vikram for the first time since that night on the rooftop. Recognition dawned in his eyes. Priya? Priya Sharma? His practiced professional demeanor cracked, revealing genuine surprise. I can't believe it, she managed a composed smile. Hello, Vikram. Congratulations on your success. Before she could say more, they were interrupted by a sleek woman in a designer suit. Mr. Malhotra, the Minister of Innovation is waiting to speak with you, she murmured. One moment, Ria. Vikram turned back to Priya. We need to catch up properly. Are you free for coffee tomorrow? Something in his eager expression, reminiscent of the boy she once knew, weakened her resolve to keep her distance. I have classes until 3, she said. 4 o'clock at Cafe Terrace on Carter Road. His smile was the same one that had once made her rearrange her entire life to help him achieve his dreams. All right, she agreed, wondering if she was making a mistake. The following afternoon, Priya arrived at the cafe precisely at 4, choosing an outdoor table that offered a view of the bustling street. She had dressed with particular care in a simple cotton kurta and jeans, her hair loose around her shoulders, a deliberate contrast to her professional appearance from the previous evening. Vikram arrived 20 minutes late, apologizing profusely. "Board meetings," he explained, sliding into the chair across from her. "Some things never change, right? I was always running late for study sessions too." "And I was always waiting," Priya replied, the words escaping before she could temper them. If he noticed the edge in her voice, he didn't show it. Instead, he launched into questions about her life, her teaching position, her research, her family. When she mentioned her father's passing, his face fell. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked softly. The question hung between them, laden with implications beyond this specific instance. Why hadn't she told him about so many things? "You were busy building your company," she said simply, "and we had drifted apart by then." Their conversation progressed through safer topics: mutual university acquaintances, changes in Delhi, the challenges of his new headquarters project. He spoke with animation about NextGen's mission to revolutionize energy access across developing nations, unknowingly echoing goals she had helped him articulate in late-night study sessions years ago. "Actually," he said, suddenly hesitant, "I could use your insight on something. We're launching a program to implement smart grid technologies in underserved communities, starting with rural areas outside Delhi. With your expertise in community-based energy solutions, you want my help." Priya finished for him, an ironic smile playing at her lips. "More like your partnership," he corrected. "As a consultant. Properly compensated, of course." She studied him, searching for signs of the boy she'd known in this polished businessman's face. "I'll think about it," she said finally. 2 days later, Priya found herself walking through NextGen's temporary offices, a converted colonial-era building in central Delhi. Contemporary art adorned century-old walls, and employees with MacBooks hurried through marble corridors, a physical manifestation of Vikram's talent for blending tradition with innovation. His executive assistant, Ria, the same woman from the reception, led her to a glass-walled conference room where Vikram waited with several team members. For the next 3 hours, Priya listened, questioned, and gradually found herself drawn into their plans. The technology was impressive, but their approach to implementation revealed gaps in understanding local dynamics, precisely where her expertise could make a difference. When the meeting concluded, Vikram walked her out. "You see why we need you," he said. "The technical solutions are solid, but connecting with communities, and that's always been your strength." "And yours was always dreaming big enough for both of us," she replied, the words carrying more history than she intended. He paused, looking at her curiously. "You know, something Professor Mehta said at the reception has been bothering me. He mentioned that I owe you more than I realize. What did he mean by that?" Priya felt a flush rising to her cheeks. "Professor Mehta always had a flair for the dramatic," she deflected. "I should go. I have papers to grade." As she turned to leave, Vikram called after her. "Will you consider the consulting position?" She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Walking away, Priya wondered if she was repeating old patterns, allowing herself to be pulled back into Vikram's orbit. Yet something had changed. This time, he was explicitly asking for her help, acknowledging her value. Perhaps that was progress. What she couldn't know was that Professor Mehta's cryptic comment had planted a seed of curiosity in Vikram, one that would soon grow into a full-fledged investigation into their shared past, unearthing truths that had lain dormant for years beneath the foundations of his success. The revelation Vikram stared at the yellowed application form spread across his desk, his mind struggling to reconcile what he was seeing with what he remembered. The handwriting on the crucial personal statement section of his Mercer Foundation application, the essay that had launched his career, wasn't his. It was Priya's neat, distinctive script. "I've had this in my personal archive since your graduation," Professor Mehta explained, adjusting his glasses as he sat across from Vikram in NextGen's executive office. I debated for years whether to show you. Why now? Vikram asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Because I'm retiring for good next month, moving to Pondicherry with my wife. The elderly professor leaned forward. And because I saw how you looked at Priya at the reception. Some stories deserve proper endings, don't you think? After Professor Mehta left, Vikram remained motionless, memories rearranging themselves like puzzle pieces falling into place. He recalled the night before the application deadline. His mother had been hospitalized with pneumonia, and he'd spent hours at her bedside, the fellowship application completely forgotten in his worry. He had mentioned it to Priya during a brief phone call explaining why he wouldn't make their study session. The next day, Priya had simply said, "Don't worry about the application. Focus on your mother." He had assumed she meant he could work on it later, perhaps request an extension. It had never occurred to him that she had completed it herself, in his name, with his research, but her words. With trembling fingers, Vikram unlocked a drawer and pulled out a worn leather portfolio, his university mementos. Inside were presentation notes, competition certificates, and project proposals. Examining them now with fresh eyes, he noticed Priya's handwriting in the margins of almost every document, her subtle corrections and enhancements woven throughout his supposed solo achievements. "Ria," he called to his assistant through the intercom, "cancel my meetings for the rest of the day and contact the university archives. I need to see something." 3 days later, Vikram sat in his apartment surrounded by evidence of Priya's invisible hand throughout his academic career. The university librarian had been surprisingly forthcoming, providing access to old security logs showing Priya's late-night sessions in the computer lab, coinciding with the completion of his major projects. His former roommate had casually mentioned how Priya had paid for Vikram's textbooks one semester when his family couldn't afford them, disguising it as a university scholarship. Most damning of all was an email he discovered in his ancient university account. A congratulatory note from the Mercer Foundation addressed to Priya, thanking her for her assistance with Mr. Malhotra's exemplary application, and noting that her attention to detail regarding the implementation timeline demonstrated exceptional foresight. They had known she was involved even if he hadn't. The realization struck him with physical force. His meteoric rise had been made possible not just by his ideas, but by Priya's constant, unacknowledged support. The foundation of next-gen solutions, his pride and legacy, rested partly on her shoulders. His phone buzzed with a message from Priya. "I've reviewed the community implementation proposal. Available to discuss my feedback tomorrow." Vikram stared at her message, shame and gratitude battling within him. Was she still doing it? Quietly improving his work without taking credit? The thought was unbearable. The next morning, Priya arrived at NextGen's offices to find Vikram alone in the conference room, documents spread across the table. "Where's the rest of the team?" she asked, setting down her laptop. "I canceled the meeting." Vikram gestured to the chair across from him. "We need to talk about something else first." Priya sat cautiously, noting his serious expression. "Is everything all right?" "No." He pushed a folder toward her. "It's not all right that the cornerstone of my career was written by you. It's not all right that you let me take credit for your work for years. It's not all right that I never knew, or never let myself see, how much I owe you." Color drained from Priya's face as she recognized the Mercer application. "Where did you get this?" "Professor Mehta." "But that's just the beginning." Vikram indicated the stacks of evidence he'd gathered. "Why, Priya? Why did you do all this without ever telling me?" She looked away, fingers nervously tracing patterns on the glass table. "You needed it more than I did. Your family situation, the pressure you were under. That's not a good enough reason to shadow someone's entire academic career." His voice rose despite his efforts to remain calm. "It wasn't like that," she protested. "Your ideas were brilliant, you just needed support with the details." "Details?" Vikram laughed incredulously. "Priya, you wrote the fellowship application that changed my life. That's not a detail. You had been at the hospital with your mother for 2 days straight. The deadline was midnight. What was I supposed to do? Her voice finally gained an edge. Let your chance slip away because of timing? You could have told me afterward. All these years. He broke off, running a hand through his hair in frustration. Was it pity? Did you think I couldn't succeed? On my own? Priya stood abruptly, anger flashing in her normally calm eyes. Pity? Is that what you think? I believed in your vision more than you did yourself. I saw what you could become if given the chance. But why hide your contributions? Why disappear from my life instead of claiming your place in the work we apparently did together? Because it was never about me. The words burst from her with unexpected force. Not everything is about recognition or credit or building a multi-million-dollar company with your name on it. Some of us just want to make a difference however we can. The silence that followed was deafening. Vikram stared at this woman he thought he'd known. This brilliant, selfless, maddening woman who had shaped his destiny from the shadows. There's more to it than that, he said finally, his voice softer. No one does what you did without a deeper reason. Priya gathered her belongings, avoiding his gaze. Ancient history now, isn't it? You've built something remarkable, Vikram. Be proud of that. As she turned to leave, he called after her, I'm rewriting the founding story of Next Gen in our corporate materials. Your contribution will be acknowledged. She paused at the door. Please don't, I never wanted that. Then what did you want? The question hung between them, laden with unspoken possibilities. Priya looked back at him, her expression a complex mixture of emotions he couldn't fully decipher. I wanted you to become the person you were meant to be. And you did. She hesitated, then added softly, that was enough. After she left, Vikram remained motionless, surrounded by evidence of a devotion so profound it had shaped his entire career. The truth he had to confront wasn't just about uncredited work or secret assistance. It was about something far more fundamental. While he had been focused on building his success, Priya had been investing in him as a person. The question haunting him now wasn't just how to make amends for past oversight. It was whether he had become someone worthy of such extraordinary faith, and whether it was too late to prove it. Full circle. The monsoon rain poured relentlessly, transforming Delhi's streets into glistening rivers. Inside her small faculty office, Priya graded student papers, the familiar routine providing comfort after the turbulence of her confrontation with Vikram 3 weeks earlier. They hadn't spoken since that day, though she'd received a formal email releasing her from the consulting agreement with generous compensation for her initial input. A knock at her door interrupted her concentration. Come in, she called, expecting a student seeking shelter from the downpour. Instead, Vikram entered, rain-soaked despite his umbrella, a cardboard box tucked under his arm. Your department assistant said I'd find you here, he explained, droplets sliding from his hair. Priya set down her pen. You're dripping on my floor. Sorry. He placed the box on her desk and used his handkerchief to wipe his face. I needed to see you. I thought our business was concluded. Her tone was carefully neutral, betraying none of the emotional tumult his presence stirred within her. This isn't about business. Vikram gestured to the box. I've been doing some thinking. A lot of thinking, actually. Curious despite herself, Priya opened the box to find a gleaming plaque. It read, Next Gen Foundation for Women in STEM, established in honor of Dr. Priya Sharma, whose unseen contributions made visible change possible. What is this? She asked, her practiced composure wavering. The first initiative of the foundation is a scholarship program for female engineering students from low-income backgrounds, Vikram explained. Full tuition, living stipend, and guaranteed internships at tech companies, including NextGen, but not limited to it. Vikram, please, let me finish. He pulled a chair close to her desk and sat, his expression earnest. I've spent weeks examining my life, not just my career, but who I've become. I realized something painful. Success made me exactly what I always claimed to be fighting against. I built technologies to empower the voiceless while simultaneously erasing the most important voice in my own story. Rain hammered against the windows as Priya absorbed his words. I never asked for recognition. That's exactly the problem. Vikram leaned forward. You never asked for anything, and I never thought to offer. That's not friendship or partnership or, he hesitated, or whatever we might have been. What do you want from me now? She asked quietly. Vikram reached into his jacket and withdrew a folded document. This is my resignation as CEO of Next Gen Solutions, effective next quarter. What? Priya stared at him in shock. Why would you? I'm not leaving the company entirely, he clarified. I'm transitioning to head the foundation and our new community implementation division. The board has already approved the restructuring. But you built NextGen, it's your life's work. No, Vikram shook his head. My life's work should be about more than accumulating wealth and power. You understood that from the beginning. I'm just finally catching up. Priya stood and moved to the window, watching rivulets of water stream down the glass. This still doesn't explain why you're here, Vikram. He joined her at the window, careful to maintain a respectful distance. I want to offer you a position as co-director of the foundation. Equal authority, equal recognition. No shadows this time. She turned to face him. And if I refuse? If I'm content with my teaching position? Then I'll respect your decision. His voice softened. But I hope you'll consider it. Not for me, but for the young women who could benefit from your guidance. Women who, like you, might otherwise pour their brilliance into supporting others without nurturing their own potential. The accusation stung because it contained a kernel of truth. Had she hidden behind Vikram's ambitions to avoid pursuing her own? Had her support been partly a way to experience success vicariously while avoiding the risk of personal failure? I need time to think, she said finally. Of course. He placed a business card on her desk. My personal number, not my assistant's line. Directly to me. When you're ready to talk, I'll be available. As he turned to leave, Priya called after him. The night you won the Mercer Fellowship, why didn't you ever ask how your application was completed when you were at the hospital with your mother? Vikram paused at the door. I think part of me always knew. I just wasn't ready to face what that meant. About you, about us, about the kind of person I was becoming. He smiled sadly. Some revelations take years to prepare for. After he left, Priya returned to her papers, but her concentration was shattered. The plaque gleamed on her desk, representing a future she had never dared imagine for herself. 2 days later, Priya stood in the empty classroom where she had first met Vikram 12 years earlier. Professor Mehta found her there, contemplating the rows of desks where eager young minds shaped their futures. I'm not surprised to find you here, the elderly professor said. Crossroads often lead us back to beginnings. You interfered, Priya observed without rancor. Showing him the application, Professor Mehta shrugged. I simply provided information. What he did with it was his choice. He studied her thoughtfully. You know, the most brilliant minds often have one significant blind spot. Yours has always been your own worth. And Vikram's, the difference between achievement and purpose. The professor smiled. Perhaps you could teach each other. That evening, Priya called the number on Vikram's card. I have conditions, she said when he answered. They met at Cafe Terrace, coming full circle to the spot where they had reconnected weeks earlier. This time, Vikram arrived early and waited for her. First, Priya began after they were seated. The foundation must operate independently from NextGen's corporate interests. No preferential recruitment, no hidden agenda. Vikram nodded. Already, in the charter. What else? Second, I maintain my research position at the university. I won't abandon my students. We could establish formal university partnerships, guest lectures, mentoring programs. Priya considered this, then continued. Third, and most important, we start as equals, not as the famous tech mogul and his formerly invisible supporter. Whatever history we have stays in the past. Agreed, Vikram said, then hesitated. But there's something about our history I can't leave in the past. He reached across the table, his finger stopping just short of hers. The reason I never reached out after moving abroad wasn't just ambition or distraction, it was fear. Fear of what? Of acknowledging that the person I left behind meant more to me than I was ready to admit. His eyes met hers with newfound vulnerability. I wasn't just running toward opportunities, Priya. I was running away from feelings I didn't know how to handle. The admission hung between them, recontextualizing their shared history. And now? She asked quietly. Now I understand that success means nothing without the right people to share it with. He smiled, not the polished smile of the tech executive, but the genuine expression of the boy she had first believed in. I'm not asking for anything beyond professional collaboration. I just needed you to know. Priya studied him, seeing both the ambitious student she had once supported and the man who had finally recognized her value. The foundation work comes first, she said firmly. Whatever else might develop between us, that has to earn its own place. Over time. Time is something I'd be honored to give, Vikram replied. 6 months later, the Next Gen Foundation for Women in STEM celebrated its inaugural class of scholarship recipients. 20 young women from across India received their acceptance letters at a ceremony attended by industry leaders and academics alike. On stage, Vikram and Priya stood side by side, no longer hidden in anyone's shadow. As they watched the recipients, girls with dreams as big as their challenges, Priya felt Vikram's hand briefly touch hers. "Thank you," he whispered, "for giving me a second chance to get it right." Priya smiled, thinking of the journey that had brought them here, from unacknowledged support to equal partnership, from unrequited devotion to mutual respect. "Some lights," she replied, echoing words she had once spoken to Professor Mehta, "are meant to shine together rather than alone." The future stretched before them, not as separate paths but as a shared road illuminated by purpose and possibility. Whatever came next, they would face it as they stood now, side by side, each enhancing the other's light rather than dimming it, their individual brilliance combining to create something greater than either could achieve alone. In that moment, Priya finally understood that her greatest strength had never been her willingness to remain invisible. It was her capacity to see potential in others, and now, at last, in herself.